modern systems create schizophrenia as a part of systemic health. They, because of the conflict of the mean with the gene, and sometimes the rules imposed upon the human being by the system, which contradicts his or her natural drives. This creates a form of forced split in consciousness. It demands a form of compartmentalization, that is, to use one standard in one context and then use a whole different standard in another context, often in contradiction to the other standard. We see this in all areas, particularly in Judeo-Christian religion, where one standard is used to evaluate the possibility of a God, let's say, and then a whole different standard is used in everyday life in evaluating and judging the world. But more so, this conflict between meme and gene is more prevalent and more evident in sex and sexual matters. That is, whereas man is forced to be monogamous and to adhere to a moral code which claims that monogamy is virtuous, his drive is not that of monogamy, and a man and a woman often found themselves in conflict with themselves. Now, for the Christian, this conflict takes on the form of mystical self-hatred, of a battle between God and Satan within the self. The Christian feels that he's a sinner, and that this is the way he's being tested. The most prevalent form of schizophrenia is in our everyday life. That is, our demeanor in public, our social etiquette, our politeness, which often is contradicted by our real feelings, which we keep hidden inside. We say one thing and we act in another way, in a different way. Or we act in one way and we feel totally against this action. We're forced to act in this way, and we're forced to hide our true feelings. This creates a split. In order for the mind to deal with this split, this conflict, and to remain true to both, one of the two sides of them must suffer. It's usually the natural side. That is, the human being, in order to remain loyal or to include himself within the social structure, and because he's been brainwashed and trained from early on to consider certain morals, certain ideals as self-evident, will repress his nature, particularly his sexuality, will push it down, will deny it. This, of course, creates internal pressures, which often come out as dreams or in the form of fantasies, or they become addictions or neurosis. I would go so far as to say that all of civilization is founded on heavy doses of hypocrisy. That is, we're all pretending to abide by communal standards, and yet none of us actually adhere to it. And some of us even deny its relevance. That is, we keep secrets, we mask ourselves, we hide our true feelings and our inclinations. For the mind that's totally indoctrinated within the moral system and is taken over by a particular mimetic ideal, this conflict takes on a very personal and important role in his life. That is, he must adhere to the ideal in order to find an identity there. His entire conception of self is based on adhering to this ideal. Therefore, anything that bubbles up from his subconscious in the form of a natural drive, a fantasy, a dream, an inclination he can't control, a sexual urge he can't control, is considered by him an indication of his vileness, his weakness. He considers himself inferior because these thoughts, these desires come to him. So the basic dynamic of this form of internal rupture between the noumenon and the phenomenon, the thought and the action, reality and the ideal, is this rupture, this conflict, I should say, between the social norms, the cultural norms, and the natural norms, genetic norms. That is, it's a conflict between genes and memes. We're told to behave a certain way within this modern world, within modern context, and yet we have not evolved sufficiently to adapt to these modern environments. So there's a conflict, and we see this in everything from the level of obesity to promiscuity to divorce rates and so on. There's a conflict between the environment that man creates by intervening upon nature and man's natural evolved inclinations that have evolved through millennia of natural selection. And this conflict creates schism, often a schism within him, and internal struggles and stresses.